Hey everybody, I'm Benjamin, aka The Terrible Australian of Supermarcy.com, and welcome to my video review of Alice Through the Looking Glass, which of course is the sequel to the 2010 box office smash hit Alice in Wonderland. So let's get right into it. Now, I know a lot of people hate the first Alice in Wonderland, which of course Tim Burton directed, but at the time, I didn't mind it. I thought it was an okay film. Yeah, it had some pretty silly moments and whatnot, but I thought it was a visually stunning looking film that had some sort of an interesting and kind of unique look to it that I found quite good. And I thought, for the most part, the cast were pretty solid in it. Like I said, it did have some silly moments and whatnot. But to be fair, I haven't seen the film since it came out back in 2010. So I don't know how I would feel about watching it now. But at the time, I thought it was okay. So I was going to try to sort of rewatch it in preparation for seeing the sequel, but I didn't get the time to get around to watching it. So basically, I just watched the sequel on its own as its own thing. And I have to say though, I don't think it's as bad as people have made it out to be, but it's kind of average. And I think the main reason for that is I think the first half of this film I thought was pretty weak. Don't get me wrong, like James Bobbin, who is taking over the director's chair from Tim Burton, like visually he brings a lot of great visual style and uniqueness to the film. But to me, it kind of just felt more like, he was just channeling Tim Burton. It wasn't really kind of his own unique visual style. But visually, the film does look great. But in terms of sort of the first half of the film, and I just found it kind of a bit dull, and it didn't sort of, and it just felt like a lot of the cast were kind of just going through the motions. Like Mia Wasikowska, Johnny Depp, Anne Hathaway. It just felt like they were just a bit bored by what's going on. And at that time, even though it sort of has sort of a time travel kind of element to it, which is something I'm always a big fan of in films and always grabs my interest, I didn't find it all that compelling for a while during the film, and I just found it kind of a bit dull and kind of just by the numbers and uninteresting. However, once it got to a certain point, and from then on in, the movie got a lot better, and and surprisingly, once it sort of got to the second half, it was actually kind of dark as well. Like there was some darker elements. Not to say like it's a really dark movie or anything like that. It just felt like it had some sort of darker elements that it wanted to explore, and it explored it within the second half of the film. And once it sort of did that, that's where the film kind of piqued my interest, and where it went story-wise, I thought was really interesting. I'm not going to say it's great storytelling, but it was interesting storytelling, and also and by the end of it, like I actually found it kind of touching as well, which is surprising. And it also gave sort of, like, I don't know, based on the box office numbers, we're probably not going to get another a third Alice movie or anything after this. But what I did like about the ending, and I'm not going to spoil what happens, it just felt like a pretty satisfying conclusion. Like I was kind of satisfied on how the film, where it went with its ending. And it sort of gave sort of the film a bit of closure as well. But I would say the second half is definitely what I really enjoyed the most about the film, particularly when it delved into more of sort of the time travel aspects, and we kind of get some revelations about stuff that happened in the previous film, and also some pretty cool visual style and some cool production design and costumes and whatnot. And one of the things I really liked about this film was Sacha Baron Cohen. And the only reason why I really enjoyed his performance in this film is he pretty much is basically channeling Werner Herzog with his performance. Because the accent that he uses for the character sounds exactly like Werner's. Like, not even just like, a German accent, but just the way how he speaks sounds very eerily similar to Werner Herzog. So basically, that's one of the aspects I really enjoyed the most, was his performance, because I just felt like he was channeling Herzog with his character as Time. But even then, they do some pretty interesting things with that character as well in the second half, where things you wouldn't even suspect. But overall, like Alice Through the Looking Glass, like the second half is definitely the stronger of part of the film. Like I said, it's a visually stunning film. There's some pretty interesting, cool ideas, and also it actually had a bit more weight to it. But unfortunately, it's just really that first half that's kind of a bit of a chore to get through, and it's a bit dull. And at least during that half as well, a lot of the acting felt very kind of phoned in, and also actually sort of thinking about it now, a lot of sort of the actors and all that kind of feel like that even in the second half as well, particularly like, you know, Anne Hathaway, and at least Mia Wasikowska has given it a good go in the second half. Like, but yeah, some of the others are just kind of a bit come across as being a bit bland, and I particularly thought Helena Bonham Carter, who's usually a really wonderful actress, I found her really bad in this film, and her performance like, I didn't mind her over-the-top performance in the first Alice in Wonderland as the Queen of Hearts. But in this sequel, though, she goes even more over the top, and it just comes across as really irritating and annoying. And it's just like, you just want to tell the character to shut up, and that's just how I felt about her performance. But they do some interesting things with that character as well, which I think kind of sort of a bit saves that character, her performance for me, in that regard. But overall, second half is pretty solid and enjoyable, but it's really sort of the first half and some of the phoned-in performances that kind of sort of sullied the film a little bit for me. And I have to say, I do agree with what some people said, that this film kind of, in a way, reminded them of Return to Oz, which is kind of like a darker sequel to The Wizard of Oz. And in some ways, well, I don't think it's as dark as that film, but I can definitely see the comparison, mainly because it's a bit more weirder, and in some cases a little bit more darker, but also just in some ways has a more interesting plot. But yeah, I feel like director James Bobbin, producer Tim Burton, and screenwriter Linda Woolverton, sorry if I butchered her name, didn't quite sort of gel it all together in a way that felt I guess cohesive as a film. So I mean, so yeah, it's a pretty flawed film that could have easily have been actually pretty good, but yeah, it's just really the flaws that kind of stop it from being as good as it could have potentially be. So, but it's a watchable film. But yeah, it's just really the flaws that kind of stop it from being a decent film. So yeah, if I have to give Alice in Wonderland Alice Through the Looking Glass, a rating, I give it a solid 2.5. Like I said, the second half is pretty solid, but it's really the first half and the performances that are kind of sullied it from being a decent film. So, yep, that's the end of my video review of Alice Through the Looking Glass. I hope you guys all enjoyed it, and I'll see you all later. See you, everyone.